inshallah. Today, or now we're going to be talking about controlling the desires. Marua versus al-hawa. So, whoever came to Friday's lecture will remember that, this is a struggle, it's a jihad, which literally means, of course, struggle. And in a sense, all of what we've been talking about today and we've been talking about over the weekend is jihad. It's a battle, a genuine, full-on battle against yourself. And it is not a battle that is any less important than physical battles. In fact, maybe if it's not as important, it may even be more important. Because there can never be success in any type of struggle unless you have achieved this inner struggle. So everything stems from it and everything comes from it. Okay. Let's talk about al-hawa. What is al-hawa? Usually we translate al-hawa as our desires, our passions. Okay? And it literally means fell down, or he fell down. Okay? And it's most often used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, it's always used in the Quran in a blameworthy sense. So the Quran uses the term as the blameworthy inclination of yourself towards passions, towards desires, towards negative things. Okay, but as for him who feared standing before his Rabb and restrained himself from hawa, verily Jannah will be his abode. Surah Al-Naziyat, okay, which is the 79th Surah, ayahs 40 to 41. So, the one who feared standing before Allah and restrained his hawa, his desires or her desires or passions, that person will go to Jannah. So it's showing that restraining one's desires and these hawa is very essential in order to be successful on the last day. And it's also called al-hawa because it throws down its follower. The person who follows al-hawa is thrown down and humiliated and disgraced by it. But what is the hawa? What is the nature of al-hawa? In fact, in reality, al-hawa is a reflex response for our collective and individual self-preservation. It's what I suppose scientists might refer to as a sort of genetic, inbuilt genetic need to protect the individual and protect the species. But from, of course, the Islamic perspective, it is those qualities that we need that are essential for our preservation. So without the hawa, without these inclinations, we wouldn't eat, we wouldn't drink, we wouldn't procreate. So al-hawa, in fact, are those urges that are at a very base level essential for our existence as individuals and indeed collectively as humanity. But in reality, what we find is, and to give an example, okay, al-hawa instigates what we want in the same way as anger averts from what hurts. Why do we get angry? The emotion of anger actually is not necessarily negative. The emotion of anger can have a positive outcome, and it's there for a reason. Anger is there for a reason because anger prevents us and motivates us to keep away from things that harm us and hurt us, and that's why one of the reasons why anger is there. So the problem is not with al-hawa as such, and the problem is not with anger as such, but the real issue is that we cannot usually preserve the limits of these aspects. And because it's very rare that we preserve the limits, that we tend to exaggerate in them and we go over the bounds, but almost always al-hawa, or the desires, are actually referred to in a negative sense. Okay, we can also define it as ready pleasure without thinking about the outcome. Ready pleasure without thinking about the outcome. Marua, what is this? Okay? It's religion and rationalism. Religion and rationalism. So these are the qualities that a human being has that is there to counterbalance al-hawa. We could say that it forbids a pleasure whose outcome will be painful and whose legacy will be sorrow and regrets. Meaning, if we follow al-hawa, the consequences of that in reality are negative for us in this life and indeed in the next life as well. So al-maruwa, it opposes that, and that is really religion and rationalism. Imam Shafi'i said, and he considered this quality to be so important, if I knew that cold water would injure my maruwa, I would not drink it. So this is something that is very important to preserve. What injures it, we should keep away from it. So this is the quality that we have that helps us to combat al-hawa. Now, mashallah, thank you to Ryan for this fantastic diagram which we've been working vigorously upon all morning. So in this diagram, what I'm trying to draw is the battle plan. Okay, what is going on? Okay, here we have the nafs. Okay, it's flashing. It's like we're playing this all day. Okay, we have the nafs. On the top, this is the self. And what do we have here? The heart, which is at the center of it, which we were talking about before. Now, on the positive side, do you notice how it goes from dark to light here? Okay? This is the light side. This is the good side. Okay? So what do we have? On the bad side, we have really just two things. Two things. Al-hawa and shaitan. Everyone, of course, has a jinn. An evil jinn. Every person has an evil jinn. And that evil jinn is encouraging them and tempting them towards evil. And what does this jinn, shaitan, use? He uses the al-hawa. In fact, that's all he has. On the positive side, we have aql. We have the intellect. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the intellect. And the intellect is to combat the desires. And whoever was there on Friday will remember we were talking about consciousness and about processing information and how if we train that consciousness through focused attention and so on and so forth, we can achieve our outcomes. We can even ignore the cravings for food, for example. And that's what we do in Ramadan, right? In Ramadan we feel hungry, we're fasting, we'll feel hungry, but we have an objective that we want to reach, which is we want to fast. So what do? We overcome that craving, and we are patient because we want to achieve an objective that is more important to us. So that's what our mind is doing, our consciousness, our intellect, right, is filtering that out, okay? And we also have the deen, okay, because the intellect in reality is not enough to combat shaitan and al-hawa. We need the deen, we need the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to do that. And that's not it. Allah is really stacking the favor for us on the side, on the good side, you could say. Because we also have an angel. As we have a devil that is tempting us towards evil, we also have an angel that is encouraging us towards good. And then we have something else here called al-fitra. The fitra is the natural inclination. And generally, and Allah knows best, it is a positive force that encourages us and motivates us to recognize that Allah is one, that He is the Lord and the Provider, and that He alone should be worshipped. And it drives us also towards leading a life of goodness and submission to Allah. Now these things are immutable. They cannot be touched. The fitrah, according to anyway the opinion that I'm going with here, is not something that can be corrupted. It can be covered, right? It can be obscured, but the fitrah is something pure which always stays there. That natural inclination always stays there. And it comes out in times of trouble. Like they say, for example, they have the saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. When you're in the thing and the bombs are blowing out and this and that, and the bombs, no one's an atheist. It's like, oh, help me, please, God save me. Okay? This is the fitrah. right? It comes out, and people put their trust and their faith and reliance completely on Allah. So this is what we have on this side, and this is what we can call murad. Now it may happen, and the person who has really attained these qualities, right? We call, this is the soul, al-nafs al-mutma'inna. This is the nafs, or the soul that is at peace and is tranquil with itself. And this soul, this nafs, actually can overcome the desires. The desires, you can look at it like a crazy wild horse, right? But if you can control it and you can subdue it, then you can you make the desires, you make the nafs take you where you want it to go. Instead of the nafs riding you, you ride the nafs, right? It's like my mum has this horse, right? She has this horse, and I decided to take the horse for a ride, except the horse, I didn't take the horse for a ride, the horse took me for a ride, right? You know, I wanted to go this way, the horse wanted to go that way, and I could not persuade it otherwise, right? That's not how you want your nafs to be with you. You don't want your nafs taking you for a ride. You need to control your nafs, and you need to bring them under control. And when you do that, really, you can really drive yourself in the right direction. Okay? Now, the other type of soul is a nafs al-lawama. This is a soul that is going between these two things, right? It reproaches itself. It falls into evil, but then it reproaches itself and criticizes itself using the aql and the deen and all of these things, but it tends to go between this one and that one, okay? And then we have a nafs al-amara bisu. This is the soul that is really inclined towards evil, right? And so this is the one that has totally given in to shaitan and al-hawa, right? So shaitan is using the al-hawa, and this soul is totally taken over by the inclination to evil. Now what can happen here is this soul actually then can begin to employ the intellect in order to justify and rationalize its evil behavior. Right? And even then, on the very worst level, it can actually manipulate the deen. Of course, the deen in the sense is pure, alhamdulillah, preserved. But what I mean is, it starts then to even manipulate the deen in order to justify its desires and its following of shaitan. In fact, this is the very, very dangerous one, the one who does that. Okay? So you can see the interaction going on here. This is like the battle that is going on, the conflict. This is as far as each of them can go, and in the center is the heart that they're trying to get control of, okay, and trying to make these nafs move from here towards there, inshallah. Okay, so to give you an idea of what's going on. Ryan, absolutely, mashallah, I enjoyed that, mashallah. Okay, now how can a person free himself or herself from al-hawa? Because this is what we want. You know, a person, any particular thing that a person may do, and again I keep referring back to Friday's lecture for those of you who were there, because I said that I'm going to be tying up what we did on Friday. Okay, remember how there was this circular thing going on, that when a person focuses on something and they give their attention to it, that reinforces their self, which therefore also forces them to pay more attention to that particular thing, and so on. Is reciprocal like that, okay? So similarly, what you can find with a person who gives in to al-hawa, they become addicted. They become addicted to any given, it could be drugs, it could be any haram thing, or any number of haram things. They become addicted. The strange thing about an addict, is that a person who is, for example, addicted to drugs or addicted to alcohol, actually gets considerably less pleasure from drinking alcohol or taking drugs than the person who actually does it occasionally. So a person who occasionally takes drugs or occasionally drinks, in that moment, they actually feel physically, it has more of an effect on them than a person who is addicted. A person who is addicted, actually, you can get to a stage taking drugs where the effect of it doesn't even affect you anymore. But it's become the person's lifestyle. It's become the way they live their life. they have moved into the state where they are addicted, and that's their focus, and that is what they're concentrating on, and it's quite hard to break out of that cycle. Now, this addiction doesn't necessarily have to be drugs or alcohol. There are many different things that the addiction could be, that the hawa or the desires prompt us towards. So how can we free ourselves from al-hawa? This is very important. So this is our topic here today, how can we fight our desires and combat our desires. Okay. Now I've taken this from a book by Ibn al-Qayyim, which has been translated by Dr. Saleh al-Saleh. It's called In Pursuit of Desires. So I extracted some things from here. I haven't included everything, but there's quite a few points, inshallah, very, very beneficial points, which I'm going to go through. And alhamdulillah, inshallah, this will be available for you all to look at later as well. Okay? So, of course, how can we succeed from the health and success granted by Allah? Always the health and the success is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you could be liberated from al-hawa by holding on to the following matters. So here are some points that you could think about, and then you could apply. And inshallah, if you apply them and you focus your attention on them and you implement these things, it is really going to help break the stranglehold that the desires and the passions of Hawa have over you. Okay? So the first few things that we want to mention, okay, is to do with cultivating self-control, determined will, guarding your self-respect and honor. Again, if you remember on Friday's lecture, we talked about the experiences that enhance self-esteem. Once you start to do this and you find that you are successful in conquering your desires, it actually reinforces your self-esteem and sense of achievement, and it's something that it's a positive self-esteem, and it's a positive sense of honor and self-respect that actually should be encouraged within us. It's not a negative one, it's a positive one. Okay? So, and then taking care to guard that self-respect and personal honor. Now, of course, it takes patience. Patience is a hugely and important quality that every single Muslim needs to develop. And the beautiful thing, brothers and sisters, about our deen is that when you are a Muslim and you're practicing the religion, practicing Islam develops patience within you. Praying 5 times a day, fasting Ramadan, it cultivates within you sabr. And there are so many things we find in our religion, cultivates within us sabr. Sabr is part of Iman. It is part of Iman. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swore, as you know, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Right? So by time Allah swore, all of the human beings are in a loss, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and they do righteous actions, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and they join together in the teaching of truth, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and they support each other in patience. Patience is very important. You are not going to achieve faith, righteous actions, or calling to truth, whether it's internally or externally, without sabr. So patience is very important. Okay? Now what we have to understand is that courage in the battlefield has certain qualities. Right? What's the courage in the battlefield? Usually the courage in the battlefield, okay, is when you're under fire. It's a difficult moment, right? The enemy's attacking you, you're under fire. Well, the courage is not when you're sitting, drinking tea and cooking whatever it is, no. That's when you're under fire. That's the time for courage, right? Now, in terms of the internal struggle, the courage in this internal struggle against al-hawa, because don't have any illusions, it's a battle. It's a 4-on scale battle, right? It's the moment of forbearance. It's that moment when the desire is strong. When the desire is strong, okay? That is the moment of courage. That is the moment when you have to stand firm. Okay? And in fact, brothers and sisters, it's those moments of overcoming those inclinations and those desires that are going to be the best moments in your life. And I refer you again back to Friday's lecture about that. Okay? If you were there, you'll be understanding what I'm talking about, the flow experience that the psychologists, they talk about. Okay? And the excellent outcome. What is the excellent outcome? Okay, of withholding and controlling your al-hawa, your desires. Okay? The excellent outcome, well, there are actually many excellent outcomes in this life, but the excellent outcome, of course, brothers and sisters, is paradise. That is the reward for controlling your desires. It is the most excellent outcome, and it's not far away. Don't imagine that the day when we meet Allah is going to be far away. No, it's not far at all. Indeed, it is close. Okay? These are the things we need to think about, brothers and sisters. We need to go through these things, think about them, and contemplate about them, because it is all going to reinforce our ability to combat our desires. Okay, what's another issue? Let's think about this one. The pain of following al-hawa, the pain of following your passions and your desires exceeds the pleasure from giving into it. Yes, we're not going to deny that there is a type of pleasure in following al-hawa. If there was no pleasure in it, it wouldn't even be a temptation, right? Of course there is a pleasure in it. But this is the reality. This is why you have intellect, and this is why you have deen. Because the intellect and your deen tells you that that pleasure is temporary. And indeed, and in reality, the pleasure that you experience is nothing compared to the pain that is going to result from it. And we can find that in many instances. What is the pain of drinking alcohol? Even. Right? Is the pain really, is the benefit, the momentary enjoyment of drinking alcohol, is it really worth the headache? Is it really worth the sickness? Is it really worth the alcohol poisoning? Is it really worth the liver disease? Is it really worth the destruction that it causes to yourself, to your family, to your friends, to society? The pain that is resulting from this is huge. The pleasure in comparison to it is minute. Adultery. What is the pleasure from that compared to the pain that is caused by it? The pain is huge, indescribably huge. This is al-hawa. Yes, there is pleasure in it. But what is that pleasure? And we're not even talking about the akhirah. How about the day when you meet Allah? How about the day when you are up bridled in sweat? How about the day when you'll be humiliated in front of all of humanity for following your hawa? How about the fire that will burn your skin, and Allah will recreate your skin, and the burned skin will burn it so you can taste the punishment? Is the desire, the pleasure of following your desire, equal to all of that? Think about it, brothers and sisters. This is what you need to do. Think about these realities. Okay? The joy of being virtuous and decent is greater than the pleasure in disobedience. Yes. The joy of being virtuous, the joy of restraining from your desires, itself is a pleasure that is greater than giving in to your wills and your desires and your passions. Okay? Another aspect that we need to think about is keeping one's good standing with Allah and in the hearts of the believers. Okay? Keeping one's good standing with Allah. When you follow your desires, it lowers your standing before Allah, before your Lord. And indeed, that is the case not only before Allah, but before all of the creation of Allah. Because you must have heard of the hadith, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves someone, He says to Jibreel, "Oh Jibreel, I love such and such person." And then Jibreel goes and tells the angels. And Jibreel says, "Oh angels, Allah loves this person." And then the angels come down to the earth and they tell the creatures of the earth that Allah loves such and such a person, until the love of this person is established upon the earth. Even the creatures of the sea, the love of that person is established. that Allah says to Jibreel, I hate such and such a person. And then Jibreel tells the angels that Allah hates such and such a person. And the angels come down and they tell the creatures of the earth that Allah hates such a person, and the hatred of this person is established on the earth. What is the consequence, brothers and sisters, of following your desires? Okay? It is distancing yourself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another thing I want you to think about is when you overcome your desires, you overcome your enemy. Think about the delight and the pleasure that there is in defeating and overcoming your enemy. Your enemy, of course, is shaitan. And we'll come back to that again. I think there's another point to do with that. The other thing is the one who follows their desires is worse. The Quran refers to them as the sharrul bariyah, the worse than animals. Because the animal, that's all it can do. All the animal has is its desires. That's how Allah has created it. It eats, it drinks, it procreates. That's what it is, actually just obeying the command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it. That's all the animals do. That's why Allah says, they are like cattle. No, nay, they are worse than cattle. Why are the people who follow their desires worse? Because Allah has given us intellect, and Allah has given us deen, and Allah has given us fitrah, and Allah has supported us with the angel who advises. So all of these things, the animals don't have these things. So when you abandon your intellect and you abandon your deen, then you've done something that is worse than the animals. Okay? So this is the condition of the one who follows their passions and their desires. Okay? Being worse than the animals. And think of the consequence of following your desires and your passions. Al-hawa. Think of the consequences of it. How many virtues do you miss? How many excellent deeds? How many opportunities to remember Allah, to worship Him, to do acts of goodness do you miss when you follow your desires? How many pleasures, true happiness is lost because of it? Okay? So for one pleasure, you lose many. How many people of good reputation, admired and respected, have been humiliated and laid low because they follow their desires? They follow their passions. Think about that. Do you want to be from them? And how about the humiliation on the Day of Judgment? Do we want to be humiliated like that in this life or the next? And think about another thing. When you see people following their passions and desires worse than animals, what's your opinion of that? What do you think yourself? Huh? You know, that's it. You think, look at that person. Has he got no shame? Has she got no shame? But that's you. That's you when you follow your desires. So why not make a judgment of yourself? Think about it. Right? Because you don't respect the people who follow their desires. So that's it. You made a judgment upon yourself. And people are going to judge you like that. Think about that as well. Okay? Don't be deceived by the force of arrogance of those people who follow their desires. Don't be deceived by them. And many people are deceived by them. You just need to turn on MTV. And you literally see the worst scum. I can't say this is what they are. The worst scum. Misogynistic, women-hating, violent, murdering, drug-taking. I'm talking about these rappers. Right? Yet some people look up to them. They're arrogant, proud, and people are taken in by it. But these are people who are calling to killing, to women hating, to treating women. You know what they call women? The names they use for them? What sort of thing is this? They really are the people of the worst possible character. Don't be deceived by that. Don't be deceived by them. Okay? And their arrogance and their force. Okay? And think about that. Compare the safety and the honor and the dignity of following the deen of Islam compared with those people who debase themselves by following their passions and their desires. Which one really do you want to choose, brothers and sisters? Okay? Remember another thing, that when you follow your passions and desires, you are in fact handing control over to shaitan. You are helping hand control over to shaitan. Remember our diagram? Right? What does shaitan, the only thing he has to get you through is your desires. That's it. That's all he's got. And when you follow your desires, when you follow al-hawa, when you follow your passions, you're giving him a bit of control over you. That's the only way that he has to get to you. You've given your sworn enemy, the one who is sworn. He swore by Allah's might, I am going to lead the mankind away to the hellfire. I'm going to mislead them with me to the hellfire. This is what he swore. So, do you want to hand this over to shaitan, to your enemy, our sworn enemy? How would you want to do that? And think of his joy when you obey al-hawa. When you follow your passions, when you give into it, he's so happy. He's delighted. Your enemy is delighted at you. Okay? Do you want to make him happy? Are you the one who wants to make shaitan happy? That you gave him power over yourself? Think about that, brothers and sisters. Okay? And what you need to do also is take joy at thinking of the shaitan's anger when you refuse to follow your desires. He's going to be upset. Alhamdulillah. When you don't follow your desires, when you restrain yourself and when you're patient, this is something that aggravates and upsets shaitan. Take pleasure from that. Take joy from that. Alhamdulillah. Why not? And as I said already, shaitan's only way to you is through the gate of al-hawa. So important then that we learn to resist it. Okay? Another quality that we want to think about is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned in the Quran, Surah 28, ayah 50, the meaning of which is, and if they answer you not, then know that they are only following their desires. In this respect, Allah divided the people into two types of people. The ones who listen to the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the ones who follow their desires. The ones who don't are the people who follow their desires. So every time you are following your desires, you have associated yourself and you have put yourself in the camp. We have put ourselves in the camp of those people who are disobeying the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah protect us from that. Okay? Think about this verse, brothers and sisters, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us the meaning of which is, have you seen him who has taken as his God his own desires? Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is likening the person who takes and follows their desires like a person who is worshipping an idol. He likens it with idol worship. Okay? Al-Hasan al-Basri, he said about this, he is the hypocrite, the munafiq. There is nothing that he desires except he follows it. Okay, that's a sign of nifaq, it's a sign of hypocrisy. That whatever you desire, you just do it. Okay? And that is the sort of person who is made their hawa, their desires like an idol. The other thing, al-hawa leads to destruction. According to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, a very, very, very valuable hadith. 3 things lead to safety and 3 cause destruction. Those that lead to safety are fearing Allah in secrecy and in the open. Yeah? This leads to safety. You fear Allah when you're in the public, and you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you are alone privately. Okay, this leads to safety. The second, uttering the truth at all times. So both of the times of satisfaction and anger. Whatever the situation is, you speak the truth and nothing comes out of your mouth except the truth. This leads to safety. Okay? And moderation at times of poverty and wealth. What we can see here is that obviously it's easy to speak the truth in times of satisfaction. Right? It's easy to be moderate, okay, in times of poverty, actually. Right? And it's also easy, right, to fear Allah. Usually it's easy to fear Allah when you're in the public, but not so easy when you're alone. Not so easy when you have wealth. Not so easy when you're angry to keep on speaking the truth. How many people do those things? But those are the qualities. If you have them, you develop them, you cultivate them, they lead to safety. And what are the ones that lead to destruction? They are hawa, being followed. The first one, al-hawa, desires, passions being followed. Niggardliness means stinginess, not wanting to spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being obeyed. Obeying your tendency to be stingy. And conceitedness. Like his pride, arrogance, conceitedness, feeling a lot of yourself and looking down on other people. These are the qualities that lead to destruction. So, meaning, hawa leads to destruction. Think about that. Okay. Each time we overcome al-hawa, it strengthens our heart. Our heart is stronger. Subhanallah, one of the scholars of the past, he said, it's a beautiful saying, the one who conquers his desire is like one who conquers a city by himself. Let's not imagine that controlling and conquering your desires is going to be easy. It's not. It's a battle. It really is a battle. If you can conquer your desires, it's like conquering. It's like taking a city by yourself. Imagine that, right? But what a truly amazing thing. That if you're able to do that, what does it show concerning your strength of character? What does it show concerning your ability to focus and concentrate? Okay? And what is true strength? We all probably, I'm sure, are familiar with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, is that the one who is really strong is not the one who can wrestle and overcome people, but the truly strong person is the one who controls his anger. Right? It comes back to self-control. Self-control. I'm bringing you back to now to Friday's talk. Those of you who were there, you'll remember we were talking about self-control, how to develop self-control. And you can see why this is so important in the context of what we've been talking about today. Okay? And finally, brothers and sisters, what is the origin of the hatred, enmity, and evil between people? Really, if you think about it. A lot of people complain, oh, the world is such a nasty place. There is so much evil happening. There are so many bad things. But if you look at it and you think about it, you will understand that the origin of this evil, the origin of this enmity, the origin of this hatred is people following their passions and their desires. So every time you follow your passions and your desires, you are just contributing to more evil, to more injustice, to more tyranny, to more wrongdoing on the face of this planet. Okay? When hawa prevails, the heart turns dark. The moral character deteriorates, and then the people will hate it, and he will hate them. Then think of the evil, enmity, neglect of rights that arise from this mutual hatred. Brothers and sisters, we don't need to contribute anything to making this world a worse place. We need to make it a better place. And what better place to start than with yourself? What better place to start with me? With you. Let's start with ourselves. Brothers and sisters, we need to spend a lot less time looking at others. A lot less time being critical of others. And a lot more time being critical and analyzing ourselves. This is the problem. Too many of us are criticizing other people. Not enough of us are spending time looking at ourselves, analyzing ourselves, criticizing ourselves, and improving ourselves. There's a saying that blessed is the person, fortunate is the person who is so busy with his or her own faults, they don't have time to notice the faults in others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength and the capability to overcome our hawa, our passions, and our desires. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us far from following our desires, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to follow the beautiful guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and follow his deen and lead us on the path to paradise. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.